afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. It is 12 o'clock. It's Friday, the 22nd of May. The noonday gun has just gone off here in Cape Town, and we are here in day 56 of lockdown at alert level 4. First of all, welcome to every single one of you to Real Estate Investor Talk. This is our weekly thought leadership webinar brought to you by Real Estate Investor Magazine in conjunction with Let's Talk Property. My name is Neil Peterson, and I'm the founder and editor-in-chief of Real Estate Investor Mag and Remag Digital Platform. So we'll be hosting these webinars every Friday. This is our second one from 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock with the latest insights on everything around real estate in South Africa and the globe. And this week, our webinar topic focuses on where to next for the residential property development sector in South Africa. So a warm welcome to you, the audience, and we welcome your participation in today's webinar. And just a little bit of house rules for best quality and visual quality. Please switch off any other streaming videos or anything that slows the signal. It's also at the bottom of the page, you'll see that there's a Q&A box for any questions that you'd like to pose to the panelists, and we encourage you to do that. And we will deal with those questions close to the end of the webinar. There's also a chat box. The chat box is specifically if there's any technical issues, sound or anything like that, that you have problem with some of the speakers. We know that some people are in remote areas, so sometimes we cannot get 100%. We know it's lockdown, people are at home. So we kind of have to deal with that to some extent. Then we'll also be sending out a poll with multiple choice questions, and we'll ask you to vote and also give us your feedback, and that will pop up on the screen every now and again. So I just want to set the scene a little bit. The world is a bit of a crazy place right now as we navigate lockdown and COVID-19, and we see effects across business, various industries in South Africa and worldwide. And the property industry in particular has been hit hard, and we will continue to see knock-on effects after lockdown ends. The good news is, well, we've got an interest rate cut. The South African Reserve Bank now expects GDP to contract around about 7% this year, compared to the initial 6.1% previously forecast. So, if we look at these, a 50 basis rate cut down to 7.25% prime rate. It's a bit of a bittersweet scenario because, especially in the face of a growing economic crisis, as a result of lockdown, and the rate cut is definitely going to give consumers and homeowners much needed debt relief. I mean, if we just look at R1 million home loan at 7.25%, the savings is around about 1,500 Rand a month. It's 17% from 9,400 to 7,900. I mean, that is really meaningful for any landlord, owner, property owner, or homeowner at the moment. So for buyers who are looking to buy prior to lockdown and feel their businesses, earnings and jobs are secure, could have one of the best buying opportunities over the year, over 20 years. I mean, we saw property prices plummet from 97. Remember those guys, we were at 25.5%. I mean, today we're at 7.25%. That's a difference of 18.25. So also you start factoring in petrol price reductions. So the real question is whether the rates will do anything to stimulate demand. I'm going to ask our panel just now for those comments as well. And rentals will certainly be under pressure for some time due to price-sensitive tenants and a surplus of rental stock. So the 2 further basis point cuts seems likely in the next 2 quarters as well. That's also some good news. It is a time to watch the cycles and trends, and that's why we got the experts here today. And the Rand also enjoyed a strong Thursday, touching the best level of 7.55, which is great news as well, currently sitting at around 17.84. So let's move on to our topic for this week, which is where to next for the residential property development sector in South Africa. So first of all, we want to discuss where the future of South African property development landscape going after lockdown and COVID-19, and discuss what does that actually look like? What is the future of the upper end luxury market versus the other sectors? Demand for housing and investment properties is mainly in the 1.5 million, as we've seen, and below price band. Will that continue? We would like to hear from our panelists. What are the plans in future of affordable housing? What's happening in that space? And how do we give people title who don't normally have that opportunity? We've got Leon Lowe here to tell us a little bit about that. And how do we house millions of people who are living in shacks right now? and has COVID-19 made us rethink our strategies in the future? So, without further ado, I'd like to ask our panel to introduce themselves, starting with Giuseppe Plumari. Giuseppe, if you could introduce yourself, please, and to the audience.
Good morning to all, and thank you for having me. My name is Giuseppe Plumari, and I'm the CEO of Stain City Properties.
Great, wonderful. James.
Good afternoon, Neil. Thanks for having me on your webinar. My name is James Wilson. I'm the CEO of the Amdec Group. We operate essentially in 5 different sectors: mixed use, where we own the likes of Melrose Arch; retirement with our brand Evergreen Lifestyles; security estates with some quite well-known security estates such as Val de Vie, Mill Valley, Sitari, all based in Cape Town. We have an affordable housing division, which we're particularly proud of. And finally, we have ventured into international properties in the last few years. Thanks again for having me on the webinar.
Absolute pleasure. Right. Steve.
Good afternoon, Neil, fellow panelists, audience. Thank you very much for having me. It's an honor to be here. Very humbled in this esteemed company of my fellow panelists. We specialize in the middle range housing. As you can see behind me, we have the exclusivity from Crystal Lagoons for the country, which we believe is a great future. And we also make sure that we do integrated housing, which we'll get into later.
Great. Rob.
Hi, Neil. Thanks for having me, and again, going along with Steve on this esteemed panel. I'm the Managing Director of International Housing Solutions. We're a private equity fund manager that specializes in the affordable housing market. Affordable to us is really housing in the 400,000 to 800,000 per opportunity range from an acquisition price point of view. And then from a rental point of view, in the 4,000 to 8,000 Rand a month level. We raised about $570 million of private equity money, which we've invested in this market over the last 10 years, and we continue to do so. We have a rental portfolio of about 10,000 housing units that we own in our various funds and manage.
Fantastic. Warren?
Neil, hi, thanks. Yeah, thanks very much for having us, to the fellow panelists and all the attendees. CEO of the Greater Tygerberg Partnership. I'm not one of the heavy-hitting developers that we have on the panel. We tasked and we work in partnership with the City of Cape Town in the urban regeneration and the re-establishment of the Northern Corridor, and specifically around Bellville and Parow, and the re-establishment of this area as a node for both investment and social upliftment. So we work very hard with the property developers, residential and commercial.
Fantastic. Leon, last but not least.
Yes, we're the odd one out over here. I'm the odd one out. Very honored to be with the panel and the viewers and visitors, and thank you, Neil. The Free Market Foundation is one of the world's oldest policy think tanks, 50 years or so. Internationally recognized, and as our name implies, we work to make the market free of high taxes and government intervention. And our interest in property is that we are probably the country's leading intellectual or policy group against expropriation without compensation. We've run a big international conference on that, and we have a book that's coming out shortly and more. But the interest here is below the affordable housing level. Our real work is what's called the Carillon Project, which is Zulu or Xhosa for my home. And what we do is we are getting title deeds for Black South Africans mainly in what we call townships, locations, settlements, rural villages throughout South Africa. We're talking quite big there. We're talking about something like 8 million estimated properties with a value of between 1 and 2 trillion Rand, which is what the famous Peruvian economist Hernando de Soto called dead capital. So we are in the process of trying to get title deeds for basically what apartheid denied black people the right to own land, and we're trying to fix that. But we do work with some of the bigger property developers at the affordable level. For example, FNB is one of our big partners in this exercise.
Great. Thank you, Leon. I think we'll get into the more of the insights a little bit later with you. Thank you to the panels. Thank you for the introductions. And I think we're going to kick off the whole subject going forward in terms of where to next for the residential property sector for South Africa. And we're going to kick off with Giuseppe. Giuseppe, where do you see the upper end estate market post-COVID-19?
I think, sorry.
No.
I think in terms of the upper end of the market, I think they're going to, what's going to be foremost in their mind is going to be the peace of mind, security for their families and quality of life. I think with this tragedy that's busy unfolding in front of us, it's become very evident that you want to live in a secure environment where you still have a level of facilities and freedom that you can take advantage and bring up your family. And I think with interest rates having dropped now, I don't think going forward you're going to have too many more of these estates being developed. If you look at Steyn City at the moment, we've put billions of rands into infrastructure. And I think this is going to be the time that the upper end of the market is going to be able to look to get into that quality of lifestyle and estate living that we offer. I think interest rates have never been better, certainly in my lifetime since I've been operating. And I think this is the time to take, to take the opportunity to invest in lifestyle living.
So tell us a little bit. I know Steyn, he's actually contributed, I think it's 320 million to bolster health and humanitarian responses, for this pandemic. I mean, it seems the surrounding communities, Diepsloot, Cosmos City, Tembisa, they benefited from this. Tell us a little bit about that initiative, because that's positive. I think that's a wonderful journey.
Incredibly. Steyn is a great patriot of this country. I mean, we all know he's invested a huge amount in his dream estate, where he's put billions and billions into lifestyle. But also he's just donated 320 million rand, or his foundation has, to help needy communities. And we've got a food program that we've been running since the outset, where on a weekly basis, mostly on Fridays, we go out to all needy communities and we roll up our sleeves and deliver, a few thousand parcels every Friday. I think to date we have done a couple of 100,000 food deliveries to date. We also have delivering happiness to Diepsloot. Diepsloot is they are our needy neighbors. They're only about 3 kilometers from us. So we have a very strong affiliation, and right from the start, we just realize just how important it is to bring job opportunity close to where people live. So we've been having a great relationship with the Diepsloot community right from the outset. Every year we have delivering happiness to Diepsloot, where we've been buying school children, thousands of school children shoes and bags on a yearly basis. So it's really, the initiative has been non-ending, and it's just been great for Doe's Foundation to really do this exceptional gesture of generosity. And it's wonderful working, with such an organization. So I must say I'm extremely proud to be part of that group.
Fantastic. James, we're in lockdown now, and the plans for return to work in South Africa in the property development sector is pretty slow. I mean, we're stressing out compared to the rest of the world. They look like they're starting to lift restrictions, and looks very different across, compared to South Africa in various sectors of real estate. Can you share how differences each market is experiencing from your view, residential versus commercial, and how employers of the construction industry particularly, which like yourselves, large property developers, with governments, how are they responding to the slow lifting of restrictions and planning to return to work if we can?
Yeah, well, first of all, I just want to applaud Giuseppe and the contributions that they're making to the economy, particularly in this tough time. I think most of the panelists will be involved in some form of charity work at the moment. I think it's something that we all need to do as big developers. So Giuseppe, I applaud what you do, and well done to those.
Thank you.
Look, it's Neil, it's tough. It's very tough at the moment. The AMDEC group, we span both the residential and the commercial arenas. And if I take Melrose Arch, for example, which is a mixed-use scheme, we've got residential and commercial operators, and it's very tough. Our tenants are really taking a lot of strain. We've got 5 hotels that have all closed down. They'll be closed down for quite a protracted period of time, I imagine. Only when the airline industry comes back will the hospitality industry start to perform well. So that's trying times. We've got restaurants which are unable to operate. Very few restaurants can make money just out of takeaway, so that's really tough on them. We're having to give rent relief to support all of these types of tenants in the hope that they'll keep people employed. You know, in the vein of what Giuseppe is saying, we need to try and support as many people as we can. So if we as landlords can support our tenants, if our tenants can continue to keep their people employed, that's an important thing for us all to do. But yeah, it's tough times, and I think you know, until confidence returns to the marketplace, it'll continue to be very tough, both across the residential and across the commercial sectors.
So does this mean this is a little bit of a strategy rethink? I mean, what can you do, or what is possible here to do?
I think there's short-term strategies and there's medium and long-term strategies. So in the short term, I think we've all got to be very sensible, and where we can partner, for example, with suppliers, where we can partner with tenants, where we can collaborate to keep tenants in business, we must do so. I think that's the same for both residential and for commercial. Clearly, people are losing jobs. A lot of people are taking salary decreases. So, you know, as landlords, we've got to try and help where we possibly can. I think it's also time to point out to those strong tenants not to take advantage of the situation. You know, if they have a strong balance sheet and a good income flow, they should support landlords, because I think landlords are really bending over backwards to try and support their tenants, and we can't do it for every single tenant. So the big tenancies, the big nationals, big listed tenants need to try and support us as landlords so that we can support the smaller tenancies so they keep them in business. And the small tenancies are huge employers of people, so it's very, very critical that we support those tenancies.
Great, thank you. Steve, you're in a slightly different space. I mean, we see Bowen Properties. You're on a huge property development across the country. I think, you know, you kind of like you.
Yeah.
So what do you think? What are the sweet spots in terms of the demand? Where are you seeing the activity? Where's that all happening?
First, just one step backwards. Giuseppe, keep doing what you're doing with Deep Slut. That's bloody brilliant. And James, your word of wisdom, I think that's fantastic to hear. That, you know, the big bullies out there must protect the little guys. You know, I think that's a very, very strong statement, and I hope some of your people are listening to that, because I think it's a very bold thing to say, James. Very well done. But we have, sorry, Giuseppe, we have our Bowen Foundation, which I'm the chairman of. Now, I've been doing charity work my entire life, not to the magnitude of Stan. I haven't quite got his checkbook. But we have a strong charity, strong support from a lot of people, and that is ongoing. We've had it now for about 5 years, and obviously through this period, you know, I've told them if I see 1 cent in the bank, there's going to be hell. So my lady is working with an enormous amount of charity organizations, helping and getting the message out there. So we're very proud of that. Yeah, we're in a different space. You know, I'm very blessed. We have a massive pipeline. We have one of the biggest pipelines in the country. I have to phone my FD and get the number, because I sometimes get it wrong. It's 30, 40,000, something like that. But you know, what we've done very successfully is we've created integrated housing. Since the day we started Bowen, we've always done integrated housing. When Joburg brought out their integrated housing policy, we were laughing because we've always done it. So, you know, as a youngster, you can come into a Bowen apartment, you get into one of our schemes that starts at $499 or $599, especially now, as you know, with interest rates. Sorry, Rob, but that's lower than renting. So, you know, I'm very blessed, and you'll see in the video later on that, you know, the president does phone me on the odd occasion, which still makes me absolutely cook myself. Always make him laugh, and I tell him that, you know, whenever he phones, I have to take a breath. There's only 2 people that make me nervous. It's Mr. Jonathan Bear when he phones me and he says, "Forget over it, Steve." I don't know, he still makes me nervous, and so does the president. And you know, he's asked me to really help to try and create title. And we've come up with some fantastic creative ideas, and we're about to announce it. A lot of it was thanks to Rob. If you remember, Rob, that your fantastic designs that we've had a look at, and a lot of people have helped me with this. And then we've got our Crystal Lagoon. So, we're the champion of integrated housing. We believe that, the previously disadvantaged people that have come out of this dreadful, horrible apartheid should get into housing. And they also should be educated, to pay the levies on time, to conduct themselves properly. We've got strict rules, strict security, and it's working. Not without problems. Obviously, now and again, there are some social problems when you try and create integrated living, but we're getting on top of it, and the people are liking what we're doing. Behind me on the picture, our Crystal Lagoon, first in the Southern Hemisphere. There's 6 more coming into South Africa, which create huge employment, and we're very proud of that fact.
Fantastic. Thanks, Steve. So, Rob, okay, what impact do you think that the new economic environment is going to have on people's choices when deciding whether to rent or buy property? Because you're in a totally different area. Maybe share.
Yeah, so I think that, even before we all knew what the word COVID meant, the economy was tough, people were struggling, we were hitting a recessionary environment, and price point was very, very key. So we found that toward the second half of last year, early this year, people were more and more looking for a quality product and a lifestyle. The lifestyle that someone can buy at Stain City is not always affordable, only affordable to sort of a very thin sliver of people in our countries. We try and target a much broader market, but as with the Bowen product, we try and provide people with an authentic lifestyle for a very affordable price, and that may be in the rental market or it may be in the for sale market. Even as the sort of last few months have progressed, we've noticed in our rental portfolio that the lower end of even our affordable product has become more popular over the last couple of months. So we're seeing stress. We're seeing even people who are paying 6,000-7,000 Rand a month, either losing their jobs and not being able to pay at all. And we're trying to do our best in our entire portfolio to accommodate people who have genuinely lost their jobs or are not getting paid for a period of time. And there's about 78% of affordable housing tenants that have been impacted in one way or another. We're not seeing that level of impact in our portfolio as yet. In March, we still collected 98% of our rent throughout the portfolio. April was at about 92-93%. We expect May to be slightly below that. We have put processes in place to assist tenants where we can and try and come to the party, give them a little bit more time to come back and pay excess deposits where they're allowed, and we've got documentation in place to deal with that. So, people are doing their best, and I think, as landlords, we've got to do our best to assist them. I don't think any of us really know where the market is going in the coming months and years, but I do think that, as was the case even before COVID, I think price point is going to be key, and it is possible to provide a quality safe lifestyle to a tenant or a purchaser for a more affordable price, and that's what we focus on. As you can see, our product behind me on the screen is a typical affordable product that we build. This particular complex is just outside of Manzimtoti, and we are able to provide, in that price range of 400,000 to 700,000-800,000, a quality product with shared amenities. Amenities themselves are something that's going to be an interesting topic over the next year. There's been so much focus on living in smaller space, but sharing amenities. Nano units have become more and more of a topic because, again, price point has become so key in a tough economy. And there's been a focus on living in smaller space and sharing services. And interestingly, in this COVID environment, those shared services become very difficult to operate. And even in all of our rental schemes, playgrounds and the like, common areas are out of bounds at the moment. So we hope that that changes as soon as possible.
What do you call a nano unit, Rob? What size is that?
So, if anyone had said to any of us 5 years ago even that you'd be able to rent or sell a unit that was 15 to 20 square meters in size, we would have laughed loudly and you would never have got it funded by the bank. The fact of the matter is, in the current environment, we are actually building units that are 18, 20, 22, 25 square meters in size, predominantly as a rental product, but even as a for sale product. In most of those schemes, you've got a decent collection of shared services like lounges, Wi-Fi rooms, outdoor areas, and gyms. Something like a gym is a great thing to have in a scheme, but right now it's not usable. So I don't think we understand yet where COVID is going to take us as far as those shared services are concerned. But hopefully we'll get back to normality. And I think that with the lambasting that our economy is taking, price point is going to become even more important than it was before. And something like social housing, we are doing quite a bit of social housing and are actually busy raising a new fund specifically for investment in social housing. I think it's an area of the human settlements department that is working particularly well. It's usable, it's open to private developers like it never was before. There you're able to provide a really quality unit in a typical townhouse type environment with facilities to tenants that are paying anything from 800 Rand a month to 2, 3, 5,000 Rand a month. And I think that is also going to have to come to the party to accommodate people in a safe, decent environment.
Absolutely. Thank you, Rob, for sharing that. Warren, I know the work that the Greater Tygerberg Partnership is doing, and that's in Cape Town, of course. It's in the northern suburbs, second biggest CBD centre there around the Bellville, sort of, you mentioned Para area earlier on as well. So do you think that an area like Bellville has investment potential? What are you seeing there?
Yeah, Neil, I definitely do. I think the area that we cover, the sort of Tygerberg municipality area, has straddled the whole sector of residential property from the top end down to the bottom end and including social housing. I think the fallout from the COVID pandemic is still to come. I think we're going to see a massive fallout still happening. And I see that bell curve in the property market shifting towards the left, which is pushing towards the lower price and the more accessible housing. I think areas that are well established, and I'll refer specifically now to Bellville, and I apologize to the national viewers who are not sure where it is. Bellville has a very strong established residential market in smaller size properties in the middle income sector. And that on its own is going to start creating demand where there's value in solid residential market. The other big sector for me is affordable accommodation. And affordable accommodation for me has to be close to or very, very near to transport accessibility and transport interchanges. And that's where we play a huge role in this area, being on 2 or 3 of the main accessible routes. I think the range of affordable housing goes from the nano units that Rob was referring to, and I think there's been a big uptick in demand in this area specifically around brownfield developments and getting nano units into the market. But the range goes all the way up to the top end of affordable housing. And for the communities that we support and coordinate, accessible rental units in that range are in high demand in this area, primarily around infrastructure and access to transport.
Okay. And that is the differentiator. I mean, the access to transport. I mean, there seems to be an old apartheid sort of infrastructure that's been left behind. Is that, to an extent, is it still there?
Interesting question. No, it's actually not. So I think there's been a huge shift in what this area represents. I think that old Afrikaans capital has changed significantly. I think there's a whole new dynamic falling into Bellville from the Tyger Valley side, where you're seeing an upper end commercial and residential market, to to down Voortrekker Road, where you're seeing a lot of Johannesburg type developers looking at refurbishments and urban regeneration type projects, the brownfield projects I referred to earlier, around the transport interchanges. I think the base infrastructure here is very, very solid and very sound. I think we've got good connectivity, we've got good solid services, transport and accessibility is very sound, and affordability is going to be a key issue. And I think this area offers exactly that, the affordable, accessible area.
Excellent. Leon, thank you very much for standing in for Themba Nolachungu. And I mean, I know you're the boss man, but unfortunately he had a bereavement. But thank you for coming and jumping in at the last minute. I absolutely just love you. One of the main drivers of this whole Kaya Lamb My Home project, which you were alluding to. And I think you've got quite an ambitious goal of between 5 and 7 million previously dispossessed families. And I know you've given title, and maybe just share a little bit about how does that process work? Because for the uninformed, some people might say, is this expropriation in another form? Or tell us a little bit about that, all the initiatives that you're doing, because I'm really, I think it's such a wonderful project that you're involved with.
Thank you, Neil. It's very exciting, and let me say that Themba is would have been better than me here for various reasons, but I am the creator of the concept of the Carillon Project, and it goes back to my anti-apartheid days. I used to, in my younger years, be a Marxist-Leninist revolutionary, as was Themba. He was coordinator of the armed struggle in the West Cape, so we have, let's call them struggle credentials. I always had a slightly different view from many other people in the struggle, which was that the biggest crime of all was the property crime, was denying black people the right to own land. And there was, you might all recall, the meme or that 13% of the land was for black people, namely the so-called homelands. Well, that was meant nonsense, because the homelands were never actually 13%. That's a different story, how big they really were. But in the homelands, there was no property titling either. So the fact is that under apartheid, black people could not own land anywhere in South Africa, not even in so-called black areas, with, some of you might know technically, the slight exemption of the so-called black spot. And there was a black spot removal policy to get rid of places like Shoshonguve, where a few black people still had title. So this has been my lifetime passion actually. I run the Free Market Foundation, which works on all sorts of economic policy, everything from exchange controls to financial policy to rule of law, etc. But the biggest thing for us is Carillon and property titling. And I'm very pleased to hear everything I've heard here of affordable housing. That's the area in which we are, but not as developers. And we need to actually tie up with developers. I think we have lots of opportunities we can share from what I've heard. And I actually am saying to myself, how come this hasn't happened yet? Obviously, this might have legs, this panel discussion.
Yeah.
So just briefly, what goes on is that under apartheid, there were various kinds of what we call apartheid title. We regard ourselves as the country's leading experts on land law, and particularly law governing low-income areas. We have a lot of knowledge and expertise there, more than anyone else I know of. And we are working at, for example, having the laws reformed so that property registers don't have to be opened through town planning schemes. And I could list them all: zoning laws and licensing laws and health and safety laws and infrastructure laws. Basically make it effectively impossible to even create titles in many situations of housing. But certainly for the 8 to 10 million pieces of property held by black South Africans, but not owned by black South Africans. That's what we are aiming at changing. We've been instrumental directly. We register titles ourselves with sponsorship. We go to low-income areas, townships, locations, settlements. We do the paperwork, we do the admin, we negotiate with the city councils. We're working with about 35 of them, covering all the political parties, ones with the IFP, ANC, DA. We party political neutral. We even work, to many people's surprise, with the EFF, trying to get title deeds in some informal settlements. And so we are the only, as far as I know, people in South Africa doing this. The government has a titling program, but it's really not titling of the former apartheid properties. It is titling where there are RDP houses to issue a title. On that, we know a lot, and let me just say that it's slightly pointless because anyone who knows anything about RDP houses know that they have an 8-year preemptive clause. By the time that expires, something like 80 or 90% are no longer occupied by the person to whom it was allocated. In other words, the legal owner is actually not, is long since disappeared. No one knows where they are. This is creating a nightmare that is almost incomprehensible, and no one knows what the solution is, so that the government is creating title deeds. And Steve, please tell the president this, who, by the way, is an old friend of mine from when we were both legal clerks. But nonetheless, the government is creating title deeds for people who are nowhere to be found. And
because there's no control.
Yeah, the people who have the property, who occupy the property, bought it in the so-called black market in both senses of the word, are some completely different person. And for all of you as developers, the property valuers, these properties are, worth 400, 500, $1 million rand each. But the point is they are trading for 15, 20, 25,000 because the people can't give anyone security of title. They're all at risk. The people living there, well, let me just tell you a little anecdote. I'm taking up too much time, but let me just get this out of the way. When we first went in Paris, Guate, Northern Free State, to residences there, we've done something like, been instrumental to well over 100,000 titles now, directly done probably about 20 ourselves and indirectly others, and maybe even more. But when we first went to people and invited them to come to the lawyer's office to sign the papers to get freehold title free from the city council, no price whatsoever, they were arranged, dates were arranged, and guess how many arrived? The answer is 0. And when we went and asked why, they said they thought it was a trap to get them to start paying rates. They were mistrusting. So one of our problems was to get people to understand they really are going to get at no cost whatsoever a full freehold title sponsored by people like on this panel and others, by investors, by developers, by welfare organizations and foundations. So it's very exciting. It's if any of you want to, we'd love to have you at one of the titling ceremonies. You won't believe what you will see. You will see people, tears in their eyes.
I've seen it. Leon, it was incredible.
We had one lady, a woman who was over 100, who was wheeled in a wheelchair, and that her property happened to be sponsored by Mr. And he handed over the deed, and she wept. And when a journalist said, "Why does it matter? You are, after all, over 100," and she said, "I can now die with dignity, and I have something to leave my grandchildren."
Wow, that's
and
fantastic.
It's a moving, fantastic experience, and you're all welcome to attend one of these and just see, incredible humanity at work.
Wonderful. Thanks very much, Leon.
So, Neil, can I just say something? Sorry. I think you're the youngest gentleman on this group, and I think I take my hat off to guys like you. It's fantastic to have you around, and we believe that sectional title compared to full title. I'm not going to open a can of worms here, but sectional title allows you to control better than full title. Because, you've got body corporate clearances, you've got this, you've got that. And, as I was talking to the president and to some of the committees of the union buildings, we specialize in sectional title. And that eradicates this kind of problem of people that can sublet if you get the correct controls. I mean, James, my daughter's just bought from you, and the controls that you've got at Melrose are bloody unbelievable. Fantastic. There's not going to be any nonsense there. She's a young lady. She's going to be safe, she's going to be secure. And that's what we try and do in Bowen as well. And, we've just designed, Rob, you were saying when you said about nano units, I don't like that word very much, but I've just challenged my architects. Sorry, Rob, I don't mean you saying the word, I'm saying the word in general, because it makes people, because you haven't got this panel's kind of wealth, it doesn't mean you you can also not have your castle. And, you know, I've just challenged, I've got some fantastic architects working for Bowen. We pride ourselves in the best of the best. And, you know, we've just come up with a 38 square meter, 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment. You know, when you say that to somebody like this panel, they'll think, I think Giuseppe just fell off his chair, you know. But you know, when you actually look at it, and it's all about the design and I think you said, Rob, amenities, etc. And we're about to go to market with it, and it is a phenomenal achievement to have got that right. And you know, I'm not going to share it just yet, but when we go to market, we'll obviously share it with you. And I think that's going to be the secret for the future: is integrated living. Interest rates are low. You know, we need to get these previously disadvantaged people into title where they can create equity. And you know, I have the courage of having a brand ambassador in Bowen who's a DJ. You know, I must be completely off my rocker, but he's a fantastic guy. He was at my house last night. With all the necessary permits, etc., etc. And Tim is a fantastic guy. You know, he's
slipped up there.
He travels the world. He's highly educated, and he was saying to me, you know, the black people have. Their priority is not title and property. And when they get a bit of money, their priority is clothes, what they look like, a fancy car, and then, oops, they're in shit. You know, I spend a lot of time talking to Temba because, you know, obviously I'm white, you know, and we lose touch with being South African. And we were talking about this project 38. He says, Steve, you're going to smash it. And, you know, to get away from buying that Range Rover or that bloody BMW or whatever, we need to get, you know, and that's what the president asked me. He said, please, you know, we need to get these people into title that can create wealth and create equity.
Okay, with that, Steve, I want to actually take some questions, you know, because there are a lot of questions that I want to get through from the delegates on here. And the one is from Roger Carpenter, and it's directed at both Giuseppe and also James. It says, with the likes of Amdek and Steyn City, consider making single residential Erven available to the smaller developers, which would provide employment opportunities for many of the smaller developers and their subcontractors. Well, what do you say to that, guys, in such a tough environment? Is it possible? What are your thoughts around that? Do you want to maybe
I can start, Giuseppe, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
As I said earlier, Neil, we operate in a number of different sectors. So Melrose Arch is particularly difficult because it's mainly a sectional title scheme, and it really is a one developer scheme. So that perhaps is a bad example for how we could bring other smaller developers in. But certainly in the rest of our business, at Val de Vie, Pearl Valley, Satari, for example, which are all Western Cape security estates, we very much make land available to smaller developers. And in fact, in the same vein as I was chatting about earlier about supporting people in these difficult financial times, we're now partnering with small developers to help them get their schemes going. So yeah, we're very much focused on that. And I think developers by and large seem to have a bad reputation. I don't know why, but I think hopefully people will see from the panel today, we're very much involved, not just in charity work and social work, but you know, we're great employers of people, huge employers of people. And wherever we possibly can partner with people, we do that too. So I don't think I speak for myself. I'm sure all the panel members have got examples of their own. But yeah, certainly at Val de Vie, at Pearl Valley, at Satari, we definitely partner with people. And right now we're supporting a large number of small developers. And we love doing that because they're big employers of people, and that's what we need to do, get people back to work.
Giuseppe, you want to add to that?
Well, I agree about his comments. You know, to bring, you know, the whole philosophy, if you take Steyn City and the development we busy with there, it is an integrated development, albeit more a little bit higher. Our starting point for apartment living is from 2 million upwards. But the thing to keep in mind, you know, we've got thousands of acres of infrastructure where we've pumped billions into it. And we want to keep that green open space for the residents open. And that immediately tells you, you know, a big amount of that development area is apartment living, in which we're doing. But if we were to sell a piece of ground with that infrastructure that we put so much money into, you could quickly see the numbers for, you know, for a cheap development just don't work out. It's really the land cost just becomes too exorbitant. You know, so our approach, you know, when you invest and you come into a place like Steyn City, it's really for integrated living, but it's also for a long-term investment. You know, people can feel comfortable. They can spend 2 million rand in an apartment and they can feel comfortable that they can spend the rest of their lives in that apartment. And I think that's where the focus is. It's not really a springboard onto the next thing. And I think that's where a lot of other income middle class sort of developments, you know, they become springboards, you know, on the way up. So, yeah.
I'm going to direct this next question through to Steve, because I know you've got a view on this. And with the market looking at repricing, and this is one of the questions from the delegates, with the market looking at repricing, are the developers considering adjusting their current price offerings? How far do they anticipate the drop, and how long would this take? What's your view on that, Steve?
Yeah, I think the prices have to go up. You know, you can't. You can only go to a certain level as a developer. Otherwise, there's going to be. The last thing we want is Amdek and Steyn City and Rob and myself and all the other panelists to go bankrupt. You know, we're a massive employer of people. You know, we have to make a reasonable margin out of what we're doing, and most developments are not profiteering. You know, unless some guys are doing things that we don't know about. So, you know, I think the prices, you know, interest rates have come down, so theoretically prices go up. So, you know, the prices are going to be stable. I don't see, I think the Western Cape has had a massive correction. I mean, I think it's unbelievable what's happened to some of your property on the foreshore. But, you know, the rest of it, I think we're seeing it. We've done fantastic sales in lockdown, unbelievable. You know, Bowen is recognized as a strong brand, and we've done unbelievable. I actually can't believe the sales that we've been doing in lockdown. So, yeah, our prices will hold steady, and if not, go up a little bit. Yeah.
Can I maybe add to that, Neil? Sorry if I can just jump in.
Yeah.
I mean, I completely concur with what Steve says. You know, we operate in a market where we really push on price, but we still want to have a quality product. And you know, we're typically partnering with developers, and we really do push back on price. And any developer that's done a deal with IHS will tell you that. And the fact of the matter is, you know, once you take the land, the infrastructure, and typically you've got local authorities pushing the envelope as far as infrastructure costs and contribution is concerned, and bricks and mortar cost what they cost, and it's very, very difficult to bring the price of a new product down. I think what we may see happening, and you know, like we saw in the CBD, you know, 10, 15 years ago when the offices started emptying out, there you get a new land and infrastructure price, because empty office building became an opportunity to build a cheaper product, because you had infrastructure and you had a land price in inverted commas because the offices had moved out. This was happening in the suburbs even prior to COVID. We're starting to see a lot of empty office space and empty office parks. Now, to me, that's an amazing opportunity. Obviously, the price that, you know, the big office owners hold these offices at is still too high. But I think this post-COVID period might be where the pricing gets more realistic. And, you know, they're centrally located. We're talking about not wanting to build affordable housing, you know, far out and 40 kilometers away from work opportunities. I think that as this office space remains empty for prolonged periods, and we're seeing it, and we're working on projects now where we're building some affordable product in really well located areas, and I think that's going to be a big opportunity.
There's a question for you, Rob. Sorry, if you want to just
add, if I can just add to that, Neil. I
yes,
think
of course, go for it.
Where we might see prices coming down a little bit is, and we've touched on it a bit earlier, is just clever design. And it's a very entrepreneurial industry. You've got smart guys like Steve and Rob and Giuseppe. I think you're going to see cleverer and cleverer designs coming through. Steve spoke earlier about a 38 square meter, 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment. And that's where you'll see more affordable houses. So the rate per square meter may not come down, but the ticket price of the properties will become more affordable.
Yeah, definitely. Sorry, and
Okay,
one more thing, Neil. One more thing, Neil. Sorry, is that I think it was James that said, developers have got to be seen in a different light. Guys like Giuseppe and James, the big guns that are doing, when I say big developments in one particular area, the government's got to start helping a lot more. I mean, I know the numbers, Giuseppe, that you spent on all the roads and stuff, and they just say silly things like, oh, well, just offset it against your bulk service contribution. Your bulk service contribution is 20 million, and Giuseppe's put 100 million rand road in. I mean, giggle. So, and James, you're the same.
Hundreds of millions.
Yeah, we do it as well. But James and Giuseppe, you've created these mega fantastic employment centres, and the government should be really rolling the red carpet out, not seeing you as this big bad wolf. So I think I'm blessed that I'm talking to governments, and that's what I'm trying to get through to them is help, and help A on the bureaucracy, and B on the financial side, because there's pipes in the ground for everybody, not just for Melrose or for Steyn City. They're for Diepsloot, and they're for the whole area. So
infrastructure.
Yes, sorry, Giuseppe, carry on.
No, I was saying, if you really look at infrastructure, that's the next hurdle we're going to face, because our bulk infrastructure is virtually non-existent.
Yeah.
And there's going to be trillions that are going to have to be spent in order to improve our bulk infrastructure. So one thing to take into consideration going forward is going to be replacement costs. So in the short term, there might be a few distressed properties that will go down, but in the medium term, let me tell you, nothing is going to come down. The cost of development in the future is going to be astronomical compared to what we have today. So times are not going to get better than the way things are at the moment to get in there if you are blessed to have the income to be able to do. It's not going to get better. There's not going to be a better time to this is the time to invest.
Wonderful. Okay, so question for Leon. I don't want to leave Leon out the conversation. I've got a question here from the audience. What can be done to assist all those who have lived on land under Ingonyama Trust? Will they ever receive any real rights to their homes?
Yes, we work in all contexts, basically, including Ingonyama Trust and KZN, where we are doing some titling. It's a bit more difficult. Ingonyama Trust is a weird creature in South Africa, created really in order to get the IFP to participate in the first election in 1993. And the Ingonyama Trust is happy with giving leasehold, security of lease, and some financiers and banks are willing to give mortgages against those leases, 40-year leases or maybe 99-year leases. We have, Steve mentioned sectional title. As it happens, we're dealing with some sectional title opportunities in the Ingonyama Trust. The Ingonyama Trust is a potential problem, but also a potential solution. We are trying very much to persuade the Ingonyama Trust to accept full freehold for people who have trust land, and we're quite optimistic. Our talks are going well with them and with other traditional and tribal communities. We do, just Steve, for what it's worth, mainly our titles, you mentioned sectional title, but it's mainly where there is one residence or one piece of land of arable allotment or whatever it might be per property. But in places like Alex, for anyone who knows it, and many others like it, there are many houses on one property. So you can't just simply issue a single title deed. And we're looking at some pilot projects there, which will be sectional title developments, where there's one basically brick house with lots of tin shacks around it. And so we are working in every single context in South Africa. I don't know of one that we're not busy with. And the Ingonyama Trust is one. But Neil, before we get too far from it, can I just say something quickly about the numbers you quoted at the beginning of the GDP? The Reserve Bank's number going up, the GDP will fall by more, and then it says 7.1% or something. Well, you don't have to be a rocket scientist or an econometrician to know the point number added over there is close to meaningless. Our own models and those of people like Darby Ritt and Rob Jeffrey and other economists is much bigger. They are trying to give us good news. We're looking at something 10 to 15% fall in GDP, and something like 4 or 5 million extra unemployed. This is seriously devastating, and I don't want anybody to underestimate what carnage this is causing in the economy, especially at the lower income group levels, which we're dealing with, food parcels to literally emaciated street vendors in Johannesburg. If anyone can help us, please do. So yes, the trust lands of Ingonyama Trust and other tribal areas, we have one in Kamazi, which is basically the land between, or the area between Nelspruit and Mozambique, and the Kruger Park in Swaziland, that area. All of the chiefs over there have agreed to give full freehold title to their residents. So it's really very exciting, if I may say. I think that it's quite remarkable what is being achieved, and it even gives me goose flesh when I think of some of the experiences we've had and are having.
Wonderful. Warren, I want to bring you in here because, and it also relates to you, Steve, as well, because there was a question, and it's to actually both of you, Warren and Steve, because Warren, what is the kind of developers you want to attract into that Bellville area? And in fact, I've got a question here, double barrel to Steve and to Warren. It says, would Steve bring, and how would he bring Bowen type properties into the Bellville and surrounding areas in Cape Town? Is this type of apartment living accessible in this type of area? So I'm going to first ask you, Warren, to maybe comment who you're trying to attract. Are you trying to attract the Steve Brooks of this world to do? And maybe then comment from you, Steve.
Yeah, Neil, we are. We're dealing with a lot of developers, and in fact, ironically, a lot more Johannesburg developers than Cape Townians in understanding what an urban regeneration model looks like and what affordable and accessible accommodation would be. So developments and specifically around urban environments is critical, and the kind of developments that Steve and his team are doing, or even James is doing, would be very welcome in this area. Look, I also think, and it's almost a question for the panelists more than anything else, the biggest frustration that we have is the application processes that the developers have to go through, specifically in the inner core. So we're pushing developers to the outer core limits of the urban areas, and we're not getting them into the inner side. And if a government wants to develop and stimulate an economy, the best way is to get part of their own money in a partnership, collaborative type model, working with developers to drive these kind of affordable accommodation developments in the inner core rather than on the boundaries. So I certainly think that developers like James and Steve would be welcome in this area.
Or Neil, could I just say something about that?
Certainly.
One of our big areas, we have a separate project which is actually looking at the laws governing development of low-income housing. Essentially, the laws, to put it in historical context, I was once head of the country's biggest conveyancing department, and so know the laws very well and know them then. But the law was basically designed in the old South Africa for rich white, what we call suburbs, for leafy suburbs. The whole property development, town planning, deeds registration, land survey, licensing, all of these laws are designed for wealthier communities. Now, what we are doing is we have a special project to revise and review the law and try and have all the laws, Warren, amended and changed so that it can become feasible, cheap and quick. There has been some legislation in the past which failed for reasons we could explain, but basically we are trying to, we have a law reform project which is aimed at getting the laws changed so that there can literally be title deeds in a shanty town. And there, by the way, there would be probably groups of properties in sectional title. So we are looking at law reform, and to put it very simply, the way the laws are now, it makes property ownership and development for the poor, which is the majority of South Africans, essentially impossible. It cannot lawfully be done under the present law, which is why there's a so-called black market or underground economy in everything from a former Soweto type property through to informal settlements, tribal land, because it is actually pretty much presently illegal to be lawful. And so there's this unlawful market, and we have as a special project trying to fix it.
Right. Okay, gentlemen, we almost
Oh,
approaching.
you missed me there, Neil. You missed
But
me
I'm going
out.
to give you, yes. So what I want to do,
Okay,
Steve,
so
I'm going to start off with you, but I also want closing comments if you don't mind. So I'm going to go around to the right panel. We have come to the end of our major discussion. So I would like just the panel to please wrap up, just to give us a way forward, something positive that we can take. And maybe you can start off with answering that question as well, Steve, and then just going in to take us all forward. What can we take from this pandemic? And what can we pass on? People are looking for a roadmap. What needs to be done going forward? To you, Steve.
If you look back, thank you, Neil. If you look back in history, from every serious bad incident in history, a lot of good has come, a lot of good. You have to sometimes go through the hard yards. There's a fantastic Afrikaans saying, which is called fussbait. You know, South Africans are good at that. You know, we're damn good. We're good sportsmen. We're good people. We're good multicultural. We've got our own horrific history of apartheid. We're out of that, thank heaven. I mean, all these people, I cannot believe what you've done, Neil. This is a fantastic panel. You know, you need to keep up with these things, and we need to all talk to one another and not be so stubborn as most of us developers are. We need to talk to one another and communicate and realize that there is an opportunity here. And I think the future is, you know, I think there's a fantastic future in this country. I love South Africa. I'm fiercely, proudly South African. You know, I've offered my services to government. I think government needs to talk to guys like James, Rob, Warren, everybody. I think it's important. I think we need to get title. We need to get into more affordable housing. And I think there's a fantastic space, and there's places for James with his fantastic developments, and Giuseppe as well. I think there's a complete cross-section which is unbelievable to see. And I think the future of this country is outstanding. It's going to be tough, but we like tough. We've got fussbait, so we're South Africans. We know how to handle this.
Thank you, Steve. Wonderful way to round. Rob, I'm going to ask you to give us the wrap-up on your side.
I think it's going to be a market like I don't think any of us have been through before. So I think it's going to require innovation, you know, innovation of product, innovation of place, innovation of maybe even the types of building materials that we use going forward. So I do think that retreading of non-residential property is going to be a thing that's going to come, and using existing infrastructure. To Giuseppe's point, there is just not enough infrastructure left anymore. So I think we're going to see some innovative product, some innovative retreading of non-residential property, and it could be an exciting time. And yeah, we got a fussbait. It's going to be hard. It's not going to be an easy road, but as Steve said, we'll pull through.
Great. Okay, Warren, wrap up.
Cheers, Neil. Yeah, thanks to the rest of the panel. And I'm very pleased to hear that there's a range of products that are being put out to the market. Steve, your new products, Rob, the stuff that you guys are doing, as well as James. I think the range of products is really important. I think the only thing that I want to stress is that partnership is a key element going forward. And whether it's between developers themselves, or it's between developing government or developing the public sector, I think there needs to be a strong cohesion in how we go forward in offering the right product to the market, and identifying what the market needs and not just what the developers are trying to leverage out in return. So I think there's a lot more collaboration that could happen, but I'm very pleased to hear what's happening on the development side. And yeah, we're open for business.
Wonderful. Thanks, Warren. James, over to you for the wrap-up.
Just a couple of points on specifically on the property sector. I echo what Warren says. There's going to be a lot of opportunity for partnerships. And I think we've all been saying in a relatively subtle way that we need government to step in and be involved with us to help us solve a lot of our housing problems. Secondly, perhaps a little bit moved away from real estate, but given that we're in the retirement business as well, and we're very exposed to looking after elderly people who are most exposed to this COVID-19 illness and virus, we've got a lot of hardworking nurses and carers, and I just want to have a shout out not only to the people who work for me, but all nurses and doctors out there on the front line doing a fantastic job. I think this virus is really kicking off now, and I think we're all very mindful of what a great job they're doing and what they will be doing going forward. And then just lastly, I think to be positive, as I keep telling all my colleagues and friends and family, as soon as a vaccine's discovered, which we have some amazing scientists worldwide. I'm sure that they will get us there relatively soon. I think you just got to understand human beings are social by nature. And I think a lot of things will just go back to the way they were in the past. I think we need to keep ourselves safe and healthy and look after as many people as we possibly can, but be positive that we will get back to where we were sooner rather than later.
Thank you very much, James. Giuseppe, in close?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of challenges ahead of us. There's a lot of unknowns. I think it's going to be extremely important to keep nimble and alert because change is coming. But foremost, everything, we've got to remain positive and believe in the future of this country. Let's hold hands and let's see it through.
Leon, last but not least.
Yes, I'm sorry that you weren't keeping the best for last, but
keeping the youngest for last, Leon.
But Steve mentioned, you know, Afrikaner. The other one is a boermakeplan, and that's what I hear you people talking about. And I'm very impressed. Yeah. And the other one is about the optimism. Yes, we should be pessimistic. The economy is being absolutely devastated, but the optimism is the Chinese symbol for crisis, is a problem with opportunity. So definitely there are opportunities, very important here. I'm very excited, I might say, by being in this company. I'm just moved by what you people are doing, and I cannot believe that I haven't been partnering and working with you before. So I need to caution the panelists that this will have legs, and I will be in contact with you. And I think they're going to be amazing opportunities to link up and do things together. We need your help. We need your guidance, your expertise, advice, and we, you know, we think we have our areas of expertise, which is land law, property development law, all of which we're working on how to change, and the even lower end of the market, the former locations or townships, the Sowetos, the semi-formal, informal shack dwellings, tribal. So we're working in all of these areas. And if those of you that aren't in them yet, I've got bad news for you. We're going to drag you into them with us. So yeah. we'll be working with you, and I'm looking forward to that. Great panel. Thanks, Neil. And it's been for me inspirational to hear what the other panelists are doing.
Absolutely.
Quite astounding. Well done.
Yeah, thank you. So I would love to thank each and every single one of you. I think each and every one of you, you've made a valuable contribution to today, and I think you've brought a lot of insight. So I just want to really thank you. I want to thank you, the audience, for coming, and those questions that have not been answered, or any queries that you might have from any of the panelists, you can please send either by email to info@remag.co.za, or you can post your question on the Real Estate Investor Mag Facebook page, and we will deal with those questions and we will refer it to any one of the panelists. And so the final thoughts is, if you think education is expensive, consider the combination of ignorance coupled with too much power. Could be dire. So we look forward to seeing you all next week and share more insights. Our webinar is again next week at exactly the same place, same time at 12 o'clock. And next week we're discussing the rise of PropTech and widespread adoption as a result of COVID-19. So I would like to thank you all, each and every single one of you again, the audience, the panelists,